Good afternoon, everybody. This is Marty Klosterman with MAM Software. It's about 2 o'clock. We've got about a minute left here before we're actually going to start. Going to let a few more people connect into the meeting. We've got about 51 people that have joined at this moment, but I think we've got another 40 or so that were scheduled. So I'm going to give them just another minute or two to get started here. As you can see on the screen, a couple of items down there. I'm going to try to keep this to 30 minutes. Just, I know that everybody's busy. And also, if you need to drop for any particular reason, we are going to be recording this. And anybody that was registered for this event will get a link to a recording. So you can watch this again at any time in the future. Just hang on to that link. Again, next thing on the list is if you do enjoy these kind of webinars and you have any specific topics that you'd like to review in the future, please email them to me, mklosterman@mamsoftware.com. I'd love to take down your thoughts and suggestions and add them in future webinars. Last item on that list is that we are going to try our best to generate monthly webinars like this. This one, we're just kind of focusing on end of year best practices, but going forward, I would like to attempt to get monthly webinars put together for our vast customers. So again, if you can submit any thoughts, topics, things like that, I'd be happy to consider those and see what I can put together. Last little piece of housekeeping here before we get started. You are all on mute currently. If you have any questions for me during this presentation, you can type your questions to me in the little toolbar. There you go. I see Jimmy just asked a question. Will I put the webinar or a similar recording on the YouTube channel? Those videos really help out. Yes, Jimmy. So this particular webinar today, you will get that link at the end of the webinar. Two things, you'll get a link to the webinar so you can watch the recording again in the future. And secondly, be on the lookout also for a survey. Our marketing department will send you a survey similar to the registration process where you can, kind of obviously rate the webinar and submit additional topics or submit, your pros and cons there. So we are trying to build up that YouTube channel as well, though. So we'll do our best to get that updated and start to get some good content there. So again, I appreciate everybody joining us today. Hope everybody has some good plans for the holidays. I'm going to switch my slide here, quick a second. The list of topics that I wanted to review for today are as follows. Updating the non-work days in vast maintenance. Reviewing labor rates, are you still competitive in your market, and also giving you a little bit of understanding about how you can adjust labor rates by sales class or by account code. A lot of customers are not aware of the fact that in addition to the default labor rate that we have in vast maintenance and controls, you can also set up a unique labor rate by any one of your sales classes or one level beneath that by hierarchy at the account code level. And I'm going to show you a little bit of an example about that in the next slide. So we'll discuss that. Reviewing your shop supply calculations. I know a lot of times people kind of forget these things. They start the system up and they set it at 3 or 4 or 5% of parts or labor, and they kind of forget about it. But that's something very easily that can be changed, adjusted, and a small percent or a fraction of a percent can go a long way. So we'll review that as well. Next item that we're going to review is the cost multipliers. Again, a lot of times people just kind of set it and forget it, where again, some minor changes to your cost multipliers for, say, outside purchase parts or your star parts can go a long way. We're going to go through the process of cleaning up employees, just a housekeeping piece. Again, as your employees come and go, we don't delete employees because we don't want to delete any of the historical information behind the employee. We want that stored in history. So there's a function where you can expire employees, which will remove them from your list of available employees. So you don't need to scroll through as many, but it retains their history. So we'll review that. Next, we're going to go and run and evaluate an inactive inventory report. Again, just trying to do some housekeeping where maybe you've got some products on your shelves that just really aren't moving as quickly anymore, and the possibility of maybe sending those back for some form of credit. We'll review physical inventory process. We'll go through the process of building an inventory worksheet, run through a quick physical inventory for a specific group of parts, and lastly, to go through a customer merge. So with no further ado, I think it's safe to get started. Again, this is being recorded. I know I'm going to be kind of talking quickly through here to maximize the amount of items we can get through in a short period of time. So again, this is being recorded. So hopefully if I am talking too fast, you can go back in and watch the recording later. The next screen that I'm going to show is a little bit about the labor rate hierarchy. Just as a quick slide here, I'll back up in a moment. But with this, we start off at the control file where maybe your labor rate is $100. You can associate labor rates by sales class. So maybe your brake labor rate or brake sales class labor rate might be at $90. Your suspension labor rate could be set at $85. If the labor rate on the sales class is left at 0, well, then it defaults back up to the labor rate on the control file. The next level down being labor rate by account codes. So if your labor rate for sales class was $90, you could have an account code for the pads. If that's left at 0, well, then it will charge $90 per hour. It goes up and it looks at the next available labor rate. If you had an account code for calipers and a rate of $110, well, then every account code, every time that you use an account code for the calipers, it would charge that times a rate of 110 rather than the 100 and rather than the 90. Okay. Sales class here, like I said, for suspension, if it was 85, you know, your shocks labor account code might be 0. Well, then it's going to charge at $85 an hour, not the $100 an hour. If all other sales classes were left at 0 and all other account codes were left at 0, well, then obviously they charge the labor rate based on 100. So I'll show you that in VAST maintenance as we get going here. Let's go ahead and share my VAST screen at this point, and we'll get started through the list. Steve, make sure you give us the address to YouTube. I will make sure that we get an email notification sent out. Megan, if you're listening, if you can maybe put up a list or send me a link to that YouTube channel, I'll get that shared with everybody here also. Okay.
I did just share it out in that comments as well.
I'm sorry, what's that, Megan?
I did just share it out in the comments section in that questions there as well. So
Okay.
Steve should have the link now.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to open up first off with going into VAST maintenance. The first thing on my list that I wanted to discuss was setting the non-work days. So clearly I'm in VAST maintenance now. If you're part of a multi-store, you can do this from the multi-store and set your non-work days and create a text file to send it down to all individual local stores. If you're a single store operation, obviously you go into VAST maintenance at the local store level and go into non-work days. As you can see here, I'm on a machine with just a single location. And for shop number 1294, I see here highlighted in a dark blue all of the days that I'm closed for the year 2020. So if I wanted to set next year's non-work days, I would obviously want to click on next year. And as you can see, I don't have any days that I've identified that I'm going to be closed as far as holidays or Saturdays and Sundays, etc. Now at the bottom left-hand corner of this screen, I have a quick select function. If I click on the little blue check mark, I can say mark all Sundays. I'm not going to be open on any Sundays, and it automatically does that for me. Now, if I also want to be closed on New Year's Day, I'll close that, and I'll say Memorial Day, and I'll say 4th of July, and I'll say Labor Day, and Thanksgiving, and Christmas are some of the common ones here that you can mark as non-work days. Any day that is marked as a non-work day, just as an update here, if a day is marked as a non-work day, but you attempt to close any sales or invoice any customers on one of those days, it simply takes that revenue and it will apply it to the next business day. So, you know, if for some reason you invoice out a customer, if you're in doing some inventory or something on the 1st of the month, and you know, you need to invoice somebody out for a battery, that's an emergency situation, we'll go ahead and invoice them out for a battery on Friday the 1st. However, that sale will automatically push into Saturday the 2nd. Okay. So just a quick thing that you want to do at the end of every year is make sure that you've got your non-work days updated. Simply mark those and hit done, save changes, and answer yes. If you were part of a multi-store environment, you'd have the ability to toggle to different shops within your organization and set their non-work days accordingly. And answer yes, and I'm back to vast maintenance. Next item on the list is to review the labor rates, okay? And that is in vast maintenance under controls. And again, if you're part of a multi-shop environment, this is something that you might need to address at the individual store level. You know, you may have some stores that are more rural, some more inner city, and the labor rates could be different based on individual shops. But in controls, under the system parameters tab, is where we see the default labor rate. Now, on my machine, I have my default labor rate set at $110. Again, maybe it's time to reevaluate this, make some minor changes to your labor rate. And just a simple change to that dollar amount, if I make that now $115, and hit done, and okay, that change will take effect the next time I start VAST. So I can quit out of VAST and go back into VAST, and my labor rate has been updated accordingly. So that's a real simple change that you guys could make, not a big deal. But the next level that I'd like to discuss is you know, the labor rates based on the account code or by sales class. As I mentioned earlier, if you think about that hierarchy again, let me pull that back up. If we think about this hierarchy of the control file, I just changed mine from $110 to $115, but now I want to look at sales classes, and then I'll show you account codes. So if I'm in vast maintenance and go to sales classes, each sales class that you have set up in vast maintenance can have its own unique labor rate, higher or lower than the labor rate assigned in controls. So as in my PowerPoint slide there, where I had mentioned brakes labor, if I go into brakes here and double click, I have the ability to assign a different labor rate here. If I leave it at 0, it will go up to the control file labor rate at $115 per hour. However, if I want to change this to $90 an hour, maybe on my brakes, I'm willing to sell it at a little bit less. Maybe the employees that do my brake work are not as highly certified, and you can move them through at a little bit lower rate to remain competitive in your market based on that type of work. But your other work, your diagnostic work, your engine mechanical work, and things like that might be a little bit complicated. And obviously you want to bump that labor rate accordingly. Some people will have, you know, a diagnostic labor rate set at $130 or $140 per hour. Seth has a question for me here. Where is Vast Commerce pulling the labor from? Control file or somewhere in Vast Commerce? Vast Commerce is pulling the labor rate from controls. However, it follows this hierarchy here. So if you determine that in the brake sales class, you wanted to have a higher or a lower labor rate, if the labor line item that you have on your master table for brake labor is associated to an account code or sales class that falls into brakes, it's going to follow this hierarchy. Hopefully that answered your question. If not, Seth, let me know. So in this instance, I'm going to change my labor rate here for brakes to $90, and I will save that. and hit done. And I could go into other sales classes and do the same thing. Let's say under suspension or shocks and struts. Shocks and struts, I was going to make that 85 and save it. And I could just go back to my list of sales classes and continue making changes as needed. Again, if the labor rate here is 0, it's going uphill and it's looking at the labor rate associated to the control file. Okay. So I've made a couple of changes, brakes and the suspension labor. Now the next layer down is under the account code tab. In account codes, if I click on that and I look for the account code associated to calipers, I can just type in CALI like caliper there and hit the ... and it shows me brake calipers, brake caliper kits, caliper pins, caliper bolts. I could go into any one of these 4 different account codes and change the labor rate. As you'll see when I go into these right now, the current labor rate is 0. If it's 0 here, it looks at the next level up, which is sales class. And I had changed my sales class on calipers, or brakes, I should say, to $90. So it would still charge 90 rather than the 115 in my control file setting. But I could essentially say here, well, for most brakes, I want to charge $90 an hour. But if it's caliper related, maybe I want to bump that up to $100 an hour. I could do that, and it would follow accordingly. And I could go back to my account codes and do the same thing for brake caliper kits and save that, and so on and so forth. And I'll do one more, caliper bolt, and save it. So now anytime that I'm doing labor where it's associated to these account codes, it would charge it at $100 per hour rather than the 90 that was on the sales class, or rather than the 115 that was in the control file setting. Frank has a quick question here. With the changes in the labor in the multi-store, or will the changes in the labor in the multi-store flow down from the multi-store? Will I have to go each store? Frank, those can be done at the sales class level, and the account code level can be done at the multi-store, and create a text file and hit save and done, and it'll transfer those changes all down to the individual local stores. They do not need to be done locally. The only thing that should be done locally is the control file if needed. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my other account code here quick a second for suspension. Well, actually, I'd left those at zeros. So I'm going to go ahead and hit done there. Perfect. Next item on the list is going to be reviewing the shop supply calculations. Shop supplies, again, are in the control files in vast maintenance under the fees and road hazard warranty. In the upper left-hand corner of my screen here, you can see that I'm currently charging 6% of my parts and labor revenue with a maximum dollar amount of $25 and a minimum dollar amount of $0. And that gets applied to every single ticket that goes through the system. Obviously, shop supplies can be changed on an individual job-by-job basis. They can be deleted if needed. So you've got control over that, but it might just be time to reevaluate the current percentage that you're charging and whether you're charging it on parts and labor or just one or the other. So just some simple changes that you might want to consider there. Now, in accordance with this or related to this, again, each one of your sales classes, you have the ability to determine whether or not the sales class should calculate shop supplies or not as part of the revenue. So if I make some changes to this, that's fine, but just know back in the sales class function, I can go into individual sales classes. For example, passenger tires here is not checked where it says include in fee. If that's not checked, then any revenue that I add or any line items that I add to my work order, repair order, under the sales class of passenger tires, that revenue or that dollar amount being sold is not going to increase the amount of shop supplies being charged to that customer. So again, you have control at the sales class level to determine whether or not it's going to be calculated based on the sales of any of these different sales classes. So again, just a quick thing that I think that you should consider looking at as part of your end of year. So that was shop supply calculations. The next item on my list was cost multipliers. Again, in vast maintenance, I think that sometimes people start to make these changes and kind of forget about them after time. In my system here, I have 3 different cost multipliers set up. I have one for tires, which is marked as my default definition. I have one for parts and one for dealer parts. Very simply, if I go into my one for parts here, as you can see, I have 10 different levels of cost multiplication here, which is associated to any of these account codes. So for example, if I were to purchase outside some disc brake hardware or the discs or drum hardware, any parts that are associated to this account code would automatically be calculated against the high or low dollar value times this cost multiplier. Again, just a minor change in some of these different cost multipliers could represent a fair dollar amount every month. You're allowed to have up to 13 different cost levels per cost multiplier label. So I tell people, why not take the time and really micromanage this? I mean, things that are less than $1, there's no reason why you couldn't use a cost multiplier of 5 or greater. I mean, if it costs me 50 cents and I end up selling it to the customer for $3, I don't think anybody's really going to bat an eye at that. So I think it's something to consider making some changes. You set the high and low levels, so really you could start off and say, if it costs me between a penny and 50 cents, make it a 7 or 8 times multiplier, and so on and so forth, because you have 13 levels here that you can adjust. If you need to create a new multiplier, it's simple to do. I can just simply click on add, say that I wanted to create one for batteries, and I would then find the account code in the available list of account codes, find the one for batteries, which is 96047, and simply drag it into what's included. I could create as many different levels of multiplication as I want, and I'll say, well, if this battery cost me between a penny and $15, I want to mark it up 1.45 times. $15.01 up to $35. Maybe I want to mark it up 1.35, and so on and so forth. I can build as many of these as I would like, and now anytime I build an outside purchase for a battery, it will follow this cost times cost multiplier calculation formula. And 55, and I'll say 1.2, and everything else I'll just do 1.15 and save that. That's simple as that. Let's see here. Randy has a quick question. Can the calculated shop supplies be overridden on an individual invoice? Absolutely, Randy. So I'll open up a work order here, quick a second, on one of my tickets. So here you can see this shop supply on this particular job was $21.54. A lot of people don't realize, but if I wanted to charge the customer $50 on that shop supply line, when you hit tab, and hit tab again, you notice that it automatically recalculated based on the formula. However, if I type in $50 there and hit tab, if before hitting tab a second time, if I right click on the part number called fee, I have an option called freeze fee. And that is now locked at $50 on this particular work order from this point forward, unless I highlight fee and right click and choose unfreeze. If I choose unfreeze, then it goes back to the calculated method of $21.54. Okay, so you can delete it on an individual basis, and you can also adjust the dollar amount on an individual basis. You just need to make sure that you right click and choose to freeze the fee. and it'll lock it in at that amount for the remainder of that ticket. Okay. So we just talked about cost multipliers. The next item on my list was cleaning up expired employees. If I go into vast maintenance and under employees, I'm just going to click F1 to show a list of all of my employees. And let's say hypothetically here that John Fisher is no longer employed with the company. What I would want to do is I never want to delete an employee because there's history that is associated to that particular employee. I don't want to delete them and delete any of the records that they were associated to. So if you've got employees that have gone, that have left, fired, whatever, retired over the last year, you should come into the employee file and simply type in the word expired. That basically means that they are inactive in the system and their name will no longer appear on lists of employees or salespeople or managers or whatever options you have for drop downs for employees. But all of the history, all of the invoices and repair orders that they were assigned to in the past will still be visible. So it's a very simple thing to do. If I wanted to say John no longer works here, expired, I'm just going to type in expired and simply save that. You've declared John Fisher as expired. You must manually change the customer type in vast maintenance to take away any mechanic privileges. So if I hit OK to that, if I had John Fisher set up in my system as a customer, like a type 7 customer, which is an employee, I would want to change their customer type from being a type 7 to a type 1. So if John ever came in for any work to be done on his vehicle, he would not get the discounted employee rate. So I'll look up Fisher here and I see Ryan Fisher. I don't even see a John Fisher on my list, but if he was on my list, I would want to change his customer type from a 7, which is an employee, to a 1, which is a regular customer. Okay. Question here from Anthony. How does that affect employee numbers? Is that number inactive or can it be reassigned? I would not reuse an employee number. I would specifically always create a unique employee number and a, I believe it's an employee number and a, let's see, what's the other term that we use there? So we've got a mechanic number and an employee number. I would always leave them alone and assign new numbers to any other employees. Okay. So that's the cleanup of employees. Next item on my list, getting kind of late on time here. I knew I'd never get it done in 30 minutes, but again, this is being recorded. So if anybody needs to drop off, do so and be on the lookout for the recording. The next item on my list was to run and evaluate the inventory, the inactive inventory. It's a simple report that we can run from Vast Reporting. In Vast Reporting, underneath the Inventory tab, we see a report called Inactive Inventory. If I click on that, I have the ability to select the date range, show part last sold on or before this particular day. Well, I'm just going to go back a couple months and I'm going to say that if I haven't sold something in the last 3 months or 6 months or whatever it may be, and I have the ability to show all types of parts or just tires or just parts, it's up to you if you want to focus on one area or another. Like I said, that's perfectly fine. For this demonstration, I'm going to say parts only. And again, I could narrow it down by sales class or by certain brand. You know, if you just want to focus on oil filters that haven't moved or just particular tires, maybe I just want to focus on passenger tires that haven't moved in the last year, but only tires from, let's say, Goodyear. I can run the report, and here it shows me a 10-page report of all of the Goodyear branded part numbers and how many I have on hand at the moment and how many I have on order, what my recommended quantity is, and how many I've sold in the last 3 months, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12 in year history. clearly, if I have these tires on hand, and especially with a recommended quantity, I might want to reevaluate the recommended quantity. But with no history on these, never sold, never sold, never sold. Let me go down my screen here a little bit and see if I show any with any history. Date last sold. Doesn't look like on my demonstration system here that I've got much with any kind of a date in there that they've ever been sold. But clearly, I mean, if I have things in here with quantities on hand with a recommended quantity greater than 0, and it's never been sold, last received was on 8/31 of 2018, good chance that I should probably work on getting that sent back. Question from Tim, are those ranges based on the date you specified? Are those ranges based on the date you specified? Oh, as far as 1 to 3 months back from there, I believe that this is actually showing me, Tim, parts sold in the last 12 months. Just like it says here, it's not based on 1 to 3 months prior to September 17th. I'd have to run the report again to verify that though. So again, with this report, it's showing me 164 different part numbers, total of 1,646 tires that I supposedly have on hand that really have not been moving. And I should consider either doing an outside purchase return or a inventory purchase return, and see if I can get credit on any of those particular products. So for example, now, if I wanted to do a return on any one of these particular products, I'm just going to focus in on this part number here, 767891537. To do a purchase return, I can go into Vast Point of Sale and go into Inventory Management, Purchase and Purchase Returns, and I'm just simply going to do a purchase return. If I can create a purchase return, say from Goodyear or whomever, let's see here, Goodyear Tire and Rubber, entered by, and I'll put in John Doe, and I'm going to put in the part numbers here that I'm hopefully sending back to Goodyear for credit. So let me pull up that number here again, 767891537. 7891537, and hit tab, and I would say I want to return all 11 of those. Here shows what my cost was according to the item table. If that's still what they're going to give me in the way of a credit, great. If they're going to charge me a little bit, maybe they're giving me a restocking fee or something like that, maybe they're only going to give me 143 bucks a piece, I'm going to put that dollar amount in there along with any FET and move on and add the next number and the next number and the next number and so on and so forth. If I already have a credit slip in my hand for all of those, I would click on vendor invoice ... at the bottom of the screen and put in the shipping and handling or freight or the invoice total of $1573 along with the invoice number, the credit invoice from Goodyear, and done, and post and print. And now it just reduced those 11 tires from my inventory, and it would have printed a document associated with all the line items on there that you just returned. So it's a pretty simple process, but it's certainly something that's worth considering if you've got a lot of product that's laying around that has not been moving. Seth has a question. For a multi-shop organization, can you run this from the main server and get information from all stores? Absolutely. You can run that report from Vast Reporting. And as you see here on my machine, you know, I just have a single shop, but if you were doing this from the multi-store, you'd see this listed for each individual shop. And you can pick and choose which shop or which group of shops you want to see that information for. Is that average cost? This is from Steve Jordan. Is that average cost or last cost? It depends, Steve, on how you have your system set up. It is based on your control file settings for the cost that you associate. Some people use last cost, some people use average cost. So you would want to look in controls, and in controls in Vast Maintenance, we identify in point of sale type of cost, and mine was set on average. Okay. Recommended quantity. Anna Marie has a message here. Thank you, Anna Marie. So the recommended quantities, as you noticed on that particular tire that I was messing with, I had a recommended quantity of say 4 or 8 or whatever. If I don't want to reorder that product in the future and it had a recommended quantity on it, you would certainly want to address that as well, which can be done again from inventory management, purchase and purchase returns, and set recommended quantities, manual entry, or you can also set recommended quantities based on popularity codes. So in this instance, if I wanted to go in and set recommended quantities manually, I would simply type in that part number again here and change the current recommended quantity. Let me just pull up that report again here quick a second so I can give you an example. So 102.851.387. 102.851 for memory. Is it 357? 387, and when I hit tab, it says that my current recommended quantity is 4, but I'm going to change that to 0 and tab down through that. The quantity date you've entered effective immediately. So do you want to continue? Yes, and basically it would not attempt to reorder that based on my recommended quantities. Seth has a question, does it track star parts? No, it does not. Star parts are something that you would have to return through the outside purchase returns function. Let's see here, Seth, maybe better asked what is the, okay, so yeah, better asked what is the best way to track star parts if entered but not invoiced? It's a great question, Steve, or Seth, I'm sorry. And we have a great report for that, in my opinion, which is, and this is one that I recommend people run also on a routine basis. And under inventory, it's called outside purchases not returned or applied. Seth, I can take that offline with you if you'd like to shoot me an email or give me a call. Jimmy has a question, how can I clear all recommended quantity and start over? I would recommend, Jimmy, that give me a call or shoot me an email also, and I can walk you through that after this call. Anthony has a question, is there a difference between stocking level and recommended quantity? They are the same thing. We don't have like a min-max, we just have a recommended quantity. So that should, they should be the same. Okay. So let's see here, the inactive inventory, physical inventory, 2 more things on my list here. Physical inventory, for those of you that are not real familiar with the process, when I go to inventory management in point of sale, physical inventory, I can create physical inventory worksheets. And I currently have 12 inventory worksheets that are already built in my system, but you can create or build as many as you'd like. In this instance, I have one group that, or one worksheet that's been built to cover air, cabin, and oil filters. 3 different account codes are on that one. Or I can look at one with just oil filters or just batteries or any combination. Here you can see where I just have the Goodyear Assurance all seasons. So you highlight whichever group you want to print. For this demonstration, I'm just going to grab my oil filter group or worksheet and drag it over to groups to be printed. Okay. And once I've selected the group to be printed, I can look at print options and I can determine whether I want the quantity on hand to be included in the report or not. Depending on who's doing the physical inventory, sometimes I don't put a check mark on that because I don't want the customer, or not the customer, but the employee that's doing the physical inventory to just look at the quantity that VAST thinks that you have on hand and just come back and say, yeah, it's the same. Well, you know, obviously you're not going to catch as many variations or fluctuations in inventory there. So if I deselect that, it's just going to show me the part number and a blank line next to it for the employee to write in the actual amount of inventory on hand for that particular product. Print if 0 on hand and sold in the last 12 months, received in the last 12 months, or transferred in the last 12 months. Yeah, go ahead and throw those on there just in case, you know, somebody hasn't captured a receipt or any kind of a transfer or something like that. I'd still want it to show up even if VAST thinks I have 0 on hand. It might at least have me on the lookout for that particular product. And I always have it set to print to the spooler so I can view the report before actually printing it to the paper and wasting a bunch of sheets of paper. So in this instance, I'm just going to click on print in the bottom right-hand corner. And it gives me a warning, you know, once you started this worksheet and begin the freeze, you will not be able to do the following activities until physical inventory is complete. No inventory adjustments, but I will still be permitted to invoice out work orders, receive outside purchases, do purchase order or back order receipts, transfer in or out. Okay, so I'll say yes. And I can exit out of here. And I sent it to the spooler intentionally so I could review that before actually printing it. In this case, I'll highlight the physical inventory worksheet with today's date on it. And it shows me that it's a 3-page report, shows me the part number and the description with a blank line for the count, and same with the line to the right. So it's a 3-page report. The 3rd page is just a blank where you can write in part numbers that you've found that were not on the previous 2 pages of oil filters. So I would normally print that. Once it's been printed, your next step is to begin a freeze. That basically takes a snapshot of the inventory and says, okay, this is the way it looks as of right now. And any transactions that happen during the freeze will be recorded so you can check those or recount those as needed at a later time. So the freeze is in place. I've got the printout in my hand. I'm out walking through the shop looking for all of those oil filters. In this case, when I go to input physical, I'll do a manual input. And these 2 columns match page 1 of my 2-page printout. So here I would need to enter in the quantity on hand for any of those particular products. Again, it wouldn't have done much good to show the quantities on the printout. A lot of times people might just, like I said, put in the same number. So if I need to make adjustments in here, I can just put in that I've got, the guy wrote in 8 of those, 3 of those, 5 of those, and so on and so forth, work my way through the list. And then go to save and continue, and it brings me to page 2, which is a match of the 2nd page of the printout. Fill in the quantities on hand and finish. It'll ask if I want to add any parts from page 3 that were handwritten in. I'll answer no. Inventory input as process is complete. Please go back to the main menu and select finish counting. It's my next step available. Finish counting. Check results, check differences. Proceed. And here it shows me the pre-count value of what VAST thought we had, the physical count and what the differences were, and transactions. So it was keeping track of any sales or transfers or receipts during that physical process. And if there was any changes, I might want to go in and recount those particular items with differences. Now, nice thing is you can click on show only differences and it strips this down real easily and says, oh, well, you know, maybe take a look at these items here where there are differences. Okay, so I could make any adjustments as needed, and I could print this or hit done if I didn't have any changes to make. Next step is to check the results, check the differences. Again, same thing. I'm just seeing 3 things. Maybe I want to go recount them. If the count is the same, I just hit done. Physical inventory discrepancy report. Thing that you may want to take a look at here is what cost basis do you want to base your inventory off of, whether it's part cost, list, or average cost. Most people use average. And print the report. And it's going to show me all of the inventory adjustments on that report. Last step is to adjust the levels. Do you wish to adjust the quantity on hand to the physical count? Yes. and the freeze has been removed and the physical inventory adjustments are done, and you're done with your physical inventory. Reports were generated in here. If I sort by date, I can see my physical inventory adjustments, and I can see my discrepancy report if I wanted to view either one of those. It shows me all of the different changes that were made to those particular inventory filters. I see a question here from Frank. Do you have to count these tires, or do you have to count the tires that were outside purchased before the freeze? If they were on an outside purchase, but they have not yet been received, they should not show up in there, and I would only count things that have actually been received by way of the outside purchase. So I guess, Frank, if you have ordered them and they have been received with an invoice number, then yes, they need to be included in that count. They should also be part of that physical inventory worksheet. Okay. Again, I know this is kind of a really quick review of these items. The last item that I had on my list was the customer number merge. And this again just gets back to some simple housekeeping. I know that there's times where you've got duplicates and triplicate customers in the database. From VAST point of sale, if I go into utilities, I have the ability to go into a customer number merge. Select the customer whose data is incorrect. So if I had multiple customers in my database, let's just see if I've got it. I don't know how many people I've got in here. This might be a bad one to perform. Let's see if I can find some duplicates. I've got two Mary Healy's here. I've got a Mary Healy with a number ending in 4 and a number ending in 26. If I knew that Mary was no longer in Jacksonville and she's now in West Babylon, I would, again, select the customer whose data is incorrect. So I'm going to put in Healy, H-E-A-L-Y, and there's Mary Healy. And this is incorrect, Jacksonville. And I'll put in Healy again, and this is looking for the one that is correct, and the West Babylon. And it shows me the customer number of Mary Healy will be replaced with the customer number of Mary Healy in Babylon, and I apply it. And it gives me a couple of options here, a couple of chances to catch myself. Are you sure you want to do this? If I answer yes, it says here in the car table, history table, estimates, accounting, and so on and so forth will be moved to the customer record of Mary Healy into West Babylon. Answer yes, yes, and those changes have been made. Seth has a question here. Multishop, we have thousands of pages of duplicates. Any way to adjust on large scale, or at least from the shop level? You mean from the multi-shop or from the local shop, Seth? I don't know of any way to do that on a mass scale. It is, yeah, local store. So this is at the local store. It can be done from the multi-store as well. There is an option from within VAST multi-store if you're part of a an enterprise environment. It can be done from the multi-store, but it is still a manual housekeeping project. We don't have a utility that will automatically do it. We do have a report, as you know. Like you said, you have thousands of pages. For those that want to run a report from utilities, we have list duplicate customers here. And if I want to do that, I can list them by name, by duplicate address, or by duplicate phone number. I typically do by address first to see how many were put in there with the same one. So I would run any of these reports. Obviously, if I do this now, let me just print it to the screen here for everybody to get an idea of what it would look like. I've got a 36-page report here, and as you can see here, I've got, you know, several duplicates, all business machines, and so on and so forth. So I would want to go through and start identifying which one of these I'd want to combine these into. So we've got a page, you know, a several page report that we can work off of to do this housekeeping, and it can just be done over time. It doesn't need to obviously be done immediately. Obviously, these have been out there for days, years. Jeff has a question. Will it bring over the history of the incorrect? Absolutely. We do not delete any history from one customer to another. When you're merging them, it's bringing over the vehicles and the history with that associated customer. Seth, I'd rather it be done from the local. Says has to be done from the multi-store. I'd have to check on that. Let me get back to you on that, Seth. Some of those could be different customer types. Absolutely, Steve. They could be different customer types, and you need to be careful about doing that, especially if you know, you're talking about accounts receivable customers. So yeah, it's something that you want to pay close attention to. Anna has a question. So would a local store be able to merge a multi-store? According to what Seth just told me, I'd have to look at it again, but I believe if you're part of a multi-store, it needs to be done from the multi-store. I'd have to double check that though, or if that's just something that's currently locked down as a never used function. So I will double check on that. That was the last that I had for our discussion for today. Anna Marie, okay, I was told the same, it doesn't work locally, okay. Thank you, Rick, I appreciate your help. Merry Christmas to you as well. Jason, yes, multi-store only. Jeff, thank you as well, I appreciate it. So everybody, thank you for your time. I apologize for going over, and I know I spoke really quickly here, but I hope that you'll take the time to maybe watch this again on the link that we'll send you of the recording. B, if you do get the survey, please respond to it. Let me know what you think of these, and if you have any topics for future webinars. My goal is to start doing these more frequently, like on a monthly basis. I enjoy doing them, and I think that everybody gets something out of them. If we can, you know, share an hour a month, I look forward to it. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to post them up here, and I will answer them as best as possible. I'll hang out here for the next 15-20 minutes as needed. Anybody else that's dropping off, thank you again, and have a Merry Christmas. Everybody stay safe, and look forward to seeing you all again in January. So thank you again, everybody. What is the reason for doing the non-work days, Tina? Yes, Tina. So the non-work days, it's just simply when you're running an end of day, if there is a day such as Sundays that are marked as a non-work day, you just could not run an end of day on that particular day. Like I said earlier in the call, if you had a sale, like I said, let's say that you had accidentally marked Memorial Day as a non-work day, it is not going to stop you from entering any sales on that day through VAST. It will still let you do all of the work that you would normally do. However, when you run your sales reports, there will not be any dollars showing up on the actual physical day that the work was performed. It will push that dollars into the following day, the following work day. And it would be combined then with that, say, Monday or Tuesday's business, whichever day was on that. Let me know if that helped answer your question. Susan, thank you. Absolutely. You just reach out to me and let me know what I can do to help out. All right, Susan. Anna Marie, I'd like to see another MAM conference. Well, I believe we have some things coming up in the new year. We wanted to get things done, I believe, in March, but as you can imagine, with all the craziness going on with COVID and everything else, it's kind of tentative. It's up in the air right now, but we are, and we do have several things in the pipeline regarding to a customer conference. We are calling it Fusion, and be on the lookout for that. So we do have some things scheduled. Seth, following up here, how critical are the patches for VAST? Great question. With anybody that's using VAST Commerce, I highly recommend that you are maintaining and staying as current as possible with regard to any patch releases that come out from VAST. That product is still, I wouldn't say new, but there are several changes that are being made to that and enhancements that are being made to that on a monthly basis. So I always recommend staying up and as current as possible. And the updates have become much more automated. You should be notified via Salesforce if you are part of the Salesforce customer community when those updates and patches become available. So I'd stay on top of those as best as possible. Non-work days, Anna. Non-work days with budgets, if you use that. I'm not sure what the question is there, Anna. I'll get back to you on that. Love the lunch with Marty. Thank you, Tim. Do more often weekly. If I can find enough topics and have enough people that are willing to join these, like I said, I enjoy doing them. I think that everybody gets a lot out of them. So add that to your survey as far as how often you'd like to see these done. I know that I get to talking and these go a lot longer than the 30 minutes that I try to keep them to. So trying to find a sweet spot that works for everybody. Tina, thank you. Looking forward to more of these. Great, I appreciate that. Maintenance items, 10%. Perfect, yes, again, keep me informed via the survey or shoot me an email of topics of things that you think would be helpful. Frank, with the cost multipliers, can I change the cost on a tire when using vTire when the tire is not in the master file? The cost multiplier that is associated to your default tire account code. So we use a default tire account code, and whichever cost multiplier label that default tire account code falls into is what it is going to use. We are making some changes. There's been several requests for development so that tire cost multipliers are more flexible. As you know, if you select a tire, it's bringing it over times the cost times cost multiplier, but based on a real generic level. It's not specific to the brand or specific to the maybe the size of tire or that type of thing, like you might have set up on the master table when it's an outside purchase or something not on the master table. So right now, like I said, I believe associated to account code 99999 or account code 96,000. So whichever cost multiplier that account code is associated to is what it is trying to use. Hopefully that helped answer your question. If not, let me know and I can follow up with you on that and give you a little bit more detail. Jason has a question. Can you use the purchase return option when parts were received via outside purchase? You can, but by doing that, it is not going to remove that product from your report that is labeled outside purchases not invoiced or applied. So yes, you can do that for any product, regardless of how the quantity was added to VAST. However, if it was purchased by way of an outside purchase, I would recommend doing an outside purchase return simply for the reporting aspects of things. Anna Marie, back on the budgets, work with non-working days each month. Again, a review of budgets would be nice. It's complicated. Gotcha. Yes, I agree. We do have some documentation on that, Anna Marie. I will look that up and get it sent out to you. Chris, thank you. I appreciate it. Topic suggestions for next time. Outside purchases not returned or applied report. This is one of the big sticking points for us. It's a great report, Chris. And again, I try to get people running that on a regular basis. Personally, if I was a manager at a shop, I'd be running that report every day that I was in the shop, or especially any day after I was out for a day or two, I'd be running that report to make sure that I'm up and on top of things as far as parts that need to be returned. You know, especially parts that are star parts, because those, if not sold to a customer, not invoiced, you know, they set in a cloud, they sit there and, you know, it's not like they can be put back into inventory valuation. They're just sitting there. So it is a great report and I highly recommend running it on a regular basis to keep on top of that. Any other questions? Looks like we've got a few people still in the session here. So again, I'll hang out here to answer questions. for the next few minutes here at least. And then I'll stop the recording, and everybody, like I said, if you were registered, you will get this link to the recording. Hey, Ricardo, you only have 100 questions for me? I thought you could have more than that. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Kevin. Merry Christmas to you too. Happy holidays, everybody. Stay safe. Thanks, Anna Marie. Thank you, Ricardo. Anthony has a question here. So technically, you can set price multiplier by type of tire, i.e. within passenger tire sales class, setting a higher or lower multiplier by product line, i.e. Michelin Defender being more than a Goodyear Assurance. For stocking products, Anthony, if it's products that you have built on the master table and products that you plan on stocking, you could do that absolutely by account code, because an account code, like you said, for a Michelin Defender would be different than the account code for the Goodyear Assurance. So you could absolutely do that for products that are built on the master table. However, currently, until we come up with the next development change for cost multipliers, if the Defender or the Assurance were being purchased outside, meaning like a star part, and they were not built on your master table, then they would be using that default cost multiplier that is associated to account code 99999 or 96,000. But yes, if you have products built on your master table and those products are associated to unique account codes based on the product type, those account codes can be associated to their own cost multiplier label. And then we can use things such as buying levels to calculate the suggested selling price based on your cost on the master table times the cost multiplier. You're welcome. Okay, everybody, it looks like we're about wrapped up with questions. So again, thank you for all of your time. Thank you for your questions. Again, I repeat myself quite a bit here, but if you can be on the lookout for the surveys, please follow up with those. We'll get that information compiled and try to get a list sent out for our next call. Seth, is it possible to tell VAST that the park is going to be back on warranty, the part is going to be back on warranty so that it does not end up at, I'm not sure I'm following here. Is it possible to tell VAST that the part is going back on warranty so that it does not end up at, I think I lost you there, Seth. Seth, I'm going to mark down a note here to give you a call after this session. Okay.